Welcome to Pepper Shock Media's Marketing Expedition podcast, keeping you up to date with the latest in marketing and advertising. Now here's your host, Rhea Allen.
Welcome. This is the Marketing Expedition podcast and webinar series. I'm Rhea Allen, President and CEO of Pepper Shock Media, also an integrative marketing consultant and the marketing boss babe. And today we have a special treat. We have Kirsten Holmberg, who is a public speech coach, right?
Public speaking coach, yep.
Public speaking coach. Easy for me to say, right? Maybe I should just let you
the
say
irony.
That. Right? So I wanted to ask you all kinds of questions about what it takes to be a public speaker and how you work with people and coaching them, people like me who need it, right? Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit about you and what got you into this position of being a public speaker coach. Tell me more.
Gosh. So about 7 years ago or so, 2011, I re-entered the workforce as a writer and an editor. So I was ghostwriting for people who were subject matter experts but didn't have time to be doing any writing. But then over the coming years, together with my experience as a speaker, which is pushing about 2 decades now, then I married those two skill sets to enjoy helping people shape their content and their delivery to communicate effectively, this time in an oral spoken form instead of the written ghostwriting aspect.
And you have started all kinds of things, and you're also, let's see, what did you say, a panelist? Or no, you get to be a judge for TedX Boise? Or what is it, on the committee? What do you do?
I'm a volunteer. My particular role with the planning team is to oversee the speaker selection process. So I field all of the applications, disseminate that to the rest of the committee so that we can figure out our next steps with each particular applicant, whether or not we want to continue to hear more from them.
Okay, so tell me, what do you look for in a TedX Boise speaker?
Oh, I love that you asked, because this is one of the biggest misconceptions. People often think that they have to be a great speaker in order to be selected, and quite the opposite is actually true.
So chances are good that maybe I could do this, right? Okay, I'm listening.
Yeah, so we're not actually interested in whether or not somebody's a great speaker. I get to coach public speakers alongside all of our speakers are coached, whether that's with me or one of the other coaches. And that's because what we believe most in is the idea. We want to hear a great idea. Those are the principles that TED itself was founded on. And the X stands for, in TedX Boise, the X stands for independently organized. So we're licensed by TED, but that means we have to adhere to the guidelines that they've set out. And that's that it's about an idea. It doesn't matter if you're a great speaker. We'll get you there.
And for anybody who doesn't know what TED stands for, what does TED stand for?
Technology, entertainment, and design.
Okay. So all 3 things that are amazing to talk about and hear about. And I've heard some amazing TEDx. I listened to a podcast, and it's usually 15 minutes long or so to hear each one. But tell me about a particular person that you mentored or coached in when they spoke. Can you share a little bit about that experience?
You know, a couple of years ago, our now Ada County clerk-elect, Phil McGrain, was one of my clients for TedX Boise. And Phil's was a great example of somebody who really came with an idea. His idea was food truck voting. I hope that people can tap into that. But basically making it as easy to vote early, not on election day, but voting early could be as easy as ordering a burrito from a food truck. And so Phil came in with this fantastic idea, some speaking experience. He's not new to that. But really, we got to shape his content in such a way that he was able to deliver it in the most clear and compelling way possible. So it's really neat to work with him on that.
So mobile bidding from like a food truck.
Yeah, they basically outfitted a food truck with all of the gear that they needed to print and store safely and securely a ballot.
Nice. And he shared that idea. What a great idea.
Isn't it a good idea?
Yeah, that's awesome. And then, so the TEDx, they're recorded and then they're posted to YouTube later, right? And so people can listen to them,
The primary audience is the internet.
Yeah, right.
But we enjoy being able to provide that for our local audience.
Right.
Being able to
sells
showcase.
Out, right? I mean, it pretty much sells out every year.
Yep. Yeah. And we're at Jump again for the third year running for this coming event. We're celebrating our 5th anniversary. It's neat.
And is it every year around the same time?
Generally speaking, yes, because we need a long runway. We do our speaker selection process the summer before a spring event. So we're selecting our speakers and fielding applications in July, August, maybe September for an April or May event. And that's because the speakers that are selected go through 5 months of speaker coaching.
Right. Oh, wow. And is it like this for other areas who have independent TEDx speaks?
You are required, if you are licensed by TED, you are required to support your speakers, meaning equipping them to give their best talk possible. Now, there isn't always a coach in those areas, so maybe you're doing that remotely, maybe you're using some of the other resources, but the goal would be to help them do it the best they very can.
Yeah, I have a friend, Kenton Lee, who started The Shoe That Grows, is also a TEDx Boise speaker, and he's great. We liked listening to him, and actually Rotary is a part of the story, and my Rotary Club helped, I would say, give him the encouragement and motivation to continue on with his Shoe That Grows idea. Yeah, yeah, I think it's great to
and
hear
he did a fantastic job. I did hear his talk live, and you can of course see it online, but I did get to.
That's great. So. Speaking of remote coaching, you coach people all over the country, all over the world.
All over the world, yeah. And I was at first a little bit hesitant about whether or not I could do my job effectively remotely, and there are some pitfalls to it. I would always, it's way more fun to be in person, isn't it?
Face to face.
It's always more fun to be in person. But given the fact that people have schedules that make it difficult to fit this in, if they've got transit time or I have transit time, it just cuts into what we can really do. So being able to run those, I do it via Zoom. That happens to be my application of choice, and it lets us interface in a way we can talk about what are their concerns, what's their objective for their talk, what's their main idea that they really need to be sure gets across, and that everything has to fit underneath it. And then we can get into things like delivery. That's the stuff that really you need to be on camera for. To be able to see how somebody's expressing themselves non-verbally with their face, with their hands, with their use of space.
Yeah, I always try to do Zoom with video because then you can see people's nonverbal communication and if they're actually even paying attention or not, or if they, if they have a kind of a questionable look on their face, and then you need to know that you need to explain something a little bit further. I love that. Yeah, Zoom's been a great tool for us to use too.
It is a great tool, and you can record it. So if I have somebody on the other side of the lens, if you will, giving their talk, if I have recorded that meeting, they have the opportunity to see it themselves, and they can deconstruct it later, and I can just tell them, be watching for the way that you move your hand or your head, or the fact that you're not smiling when you say this. It's a confusing signal. They can go back and see it themselves.
All things I need help with. I always get tongue-tied and I get words out of order often, but somehow I still manage to get through it. But a coach could really help something.
We all can benefit. We all can benefit from having somebody weigh in.
So if you are coaching, somebody who is an executive, for example, who, maybe they don't necessarily like to be a public speaker, but they have to because given the position that they're in or the content that they know, how do you work with them? What do you say to them? What's your sessions like with them?
Well, I think for starters, and I'm sure you do this with your clients as well, you have to appraise their need. What is truly going on underneath the surface? What's their true objective? And once we've debunked that, deconstructed it, and figured out what their real hiccup is, then we can customize that coaching according to their specific need. One of the things that I see most commonly, though, and this is probably useful for anybody listening, is I think we are way too married to our slide decks. And what I mean is that's happening in several ways. First of all, people are using it to develop their talk.
Right.
And that is far too focused on the minutia. So if I could get everybody to just back up from the deck for a minute and think about what's your goal for your presentation and really chart that out in an outline form before you even open any sort of slide presentation software, you're going to deliver more effectively right out of the gate. But the other thing that a lot of people do is they use their actual slides, not the presenter notes, but their actual slides as their notes.
Oh boy.
And
yikes.
That's a crutch that is difficult to get rid of, but truly it's an impediment to connecting with the person that you're talking to, whether that's one-on-one or to a larger audience of your colleagues or a potential client that you might be pitching to, being able to really know what you're going to say because it's here
Yeah, and
Goes
have
a
it
long
nailed
way.
and dialed in. I do mentoring for small business startups or companies that are going to be pitching to either angel investors or qualified investors, and it's really interesting to me to see the slide decks before we mentor them, and then after. And usually they've got as much information as they can possibly cram on their slide decks. And when I tell them 5 words or less, they look at me like I'm crazy, because they're, generally speaking, they might be the inventors or the technical engineer type, and speaking is not their gig, but they have to do it because they're the ones who are, going and asking and wanting to pitch for money. So by telling them, you can't rely on your slide deck. What if it doesn't happen? What if you can't have technology? Then what are you going to say?
Tech can fail.
Absolutely, right?
So if you know what you're going to say, and I like what you said too, Ray, about just if you know who you're talking to, then you're not going to be so tied to sharing everything. You're going to be able to come from a posture of service and really share what's going to be most beneficial to achieving the objective that you're sharing on. So you don't need more than 5 words on a slide if you really understand the point of that slide.
Right.
And what the person seeing it needs to hear and understand as a result of it.
Yeah. Well, investors want to see a bar chart of, you're going to start here and you're going to make profits up here, right? That might be a good visual aid. But
sure, that is a great visual aid. And look, it requires no words.
yeah. So starting at the bottom and making like this hockey stick up, for our podcast listeners. They didn't see my motion of moving up. But I also want to know about your Give Back initiative, to what you're doing and what's happening with this. Tell me more about what you said is your Give Back initiative.
My Give Back is the Idaho Speakers Bureau. I have my coaching practice, which is easy to find online because it's just my name. But the Idaho Speakers Bureau is what I wanted to do to give back to our community, because there are event planners all over our state that have events, and they need to have speakers at those events. And then we've got talent, incredible intellect and wisdom, a wealth of knowledge that exists right here. There's no need to have an event planner pay big money to bring somebody in from outside if they know that this talent is here. So the Idaho Speakers Bureau exists in order to connect those two parties. So I vet all of the speakers for their professionalism, their skill in communicating, the way they interact with me as a pseudo event planner, if you will. And once I see that they're going to conduct themselves as a professional speaker, then they're green lighted into membership. And I do that because I want event planners who come, and it is free to search the directory. They can they have direct access to each of the speakers. I don't gate any of that because I'm not negotiating the contracts for them. I don't take any fee for what I do. And they can then go and see who those speakers are. But if they hire someone, I want them to have a great experience, and that's why I vet the speakers.
To make sure that they're the quality and the caliber of what you would want or expect if you were to hire them yourself.
Exactly.
Good. Exactly. And that's what I asked earlier, so how do you know if, any successful connection? She said, no, that's not what I do. I don't make money off of it. It's more for to give back. So I think that's amazing. And then the speakers that are listed there, I'm sure that they have wonderful things and stories to say as to why they are a part of it. So that's great.
I got an email just a couple of days ago from a woman who contacted me early in the year and said, I contacted you, I was looking for speakers, you referred me over to Sian Safai-Waite, who is actually a former TEDx speaker, and she said, Sian just spoke and we had our biggest turnout and our best event. And so it was really gratifying to me because, again, I don't broker those transactions. I don't always even know that they've happened, but it was so delightful to hear that they had made that connection and that it really was a win for all the people, the planner, the audience, and the speaker.
Well, if you have that give first mentality, then you'll receive in abundance without even expectation or anticipation. That's great. I love that. So you had mentioned earlier that there's one of your favorite quotes. Can you share us and expand on it a little bit?
Right. Author Brian Tracy says that your success in business and in life is 85% attributable to your ability to communicate. And I think that we all understand that, whether you're in marketing or finance or engineering, it doesn't matter what you're trying to communicate. If you can't do it clearly and with some confidence that lets the person hearing what you're saying, even if it's in written form, if that doesn't come across in such a way that is clear, you're not going to have the impact that you want to have as a professional or just as a person. Because if I'm misunderstood by you, even personally, we're not going to make the connection that we need to make in order to have any sort of a relationship. But professionally speaking, of course, what Brian Tracy's getting at is if you can communicate your ideas well, whether it's on stage in a job interview or just talking with a colleague, things are going to go a lot better for you.
Or pitching the idea that you have, or any of that. Or having a courageous conversation, you know, where, you know, confrontation might be a part of it, but if you can communicate in a way that's clear and with the understanding, and to seek to understand first, right? The 7 habits of highly effective people.
Well said.
Yeah.
So understanding what the other person needs in that conversation helps you really tailor that, and which is, of course, what you do, right? Making sure that your clients understand their audience, their ideal client. And so being able to message what you're trying to get across in a way that's, I'm sure that you choose words very carefully.
Our mantra is to disrupt, connect, and inspire. So we have to disrupt what they're doing, the audience is doing, so that we can connect with them and then inspire them to buy or purchase or build awareness or whatever the case might be, for sure.
Let there be something different as a result of it.
Okay, so let's wrap up with a few public speaking tips that you might give somebody who's about to go on stage and they, you know, need a little pep talk. What would you tell them?
Well, if they're really standing backstage and I got to be there with them, which unfortunately is not always the case. That's why I love working with TedX Boise, because I actually do get to stand in the wings and see them off to the stage, and then when they come off, I get to give them the high five or the hug. But if I'm standing in the wings with somebody like that, the first thing I'm going to do is encourage them to trust their preparation. Because I tell people, rule of thumb, whatever time you spend crafting your content, spend at least as much time rehearsing it. And if they've done that, then by golly, you can trust your preparation. You're going to be able to deliver well. And then depending on what their particular angst, if you will, might be, if they're prone to getting flushed and red because they're stressed, one of the best things I can do for them standing in the wings is hand them an ice cold water bottle. Because something cold, holding it, pulls all that cold into your system, and it's going to control some of those red flushes. So that's something you can do. But as it relates to the water, of course, that's helpful. One of the things a lot of people struggle with is that dry mouth, which that's an adrenaline reaction. If you think about it, if you're nervous and that's the symptom, I think it's because you've engaged a fight, flight, freeze type reaction, and so your body is sending all of your energy into your muscles to get the heck out of dodge.
It's kind of turned off that part of your brain that's, you know, allowing you to think with rational thoughts because you just want to get out of there.
And you don't need your mouth because you're not going to eat. If you're running for your life, you're not going to eat. So your salivary glands just shut down. Our resources are better spent somewhere else.
That makes a lot of sense.
But just helping people recognize that taking a swig of water will help. It's so acceptable in our culture today to interrupt and just have a swig of water if that happens. But most importantly, to not get in your head about that. If it happens to you, just...
It also gives you a moment to think, too. If you get ahead of yourself, that's what I'm like, where's my water bottle? I don't really need water right now, but I'm going to think for a minute, you know? So I think you're right. It gives you that moment to kind of just collect yourself, right?
Exactly. And I have a client his challenge was not so much that he was nervous immediately when he got on stage, because of course one of the tactics for that is memorize those first couple of sentences. Not the whole thing. I'm not a fan of memorizing everything. But if you memorize those first few, then you'll get on stage, you'll get those out, and then you'll kind of hit your stride. But for this particular client, who is more likely to feel nervous partway through, we devised a strategy for him that he could kind of plan pit stops over the course of his talk, where he would either get a drink of water, which shifted the attention away from him by asking a question or polling the audience or asking them to talk to one another. So
audience engagement, that's a great idea to kind of get people involved, and then you don't have to be the one talking the entire time, right?
Well, most of the time people are anxious because they feel like all of a sudden all these eyes are on them and they're so stressed about it, and it's this fear of not being able to deliver well. So if you can shift the focus away from you for just a couple of seconds,
that's a great
it really helps. And so devising a strategy for him
and everybody has their own need and their own strategy.
Well, that's the beauty of coaching, right? It's the beauty of the one-on-one relationships you have with your clients, is being able to say, okay, what do you need? What do we know? And how can we bring that to bear so that you actually can perform the best you possibly can?
And you've done some corporate coaching too,
Yeah.
right? You mentioned some pretty big name clients.
Right. I worked with a gal
who,
I worked with a gal who was speaking at Creative Mornings. She happens to also work for Google, so that was a really neat opportunity. But one that was more recent was that I had 8 speakers who were speaking at Oracle Open World. So being able to talk with all of them, regardless of where they were in location, largely engineers giving technical presentations, but coaching them in a way that they could deliver, regardless of who was in the audience, whether it was a colleague that was truly technical or a higher up that was interested in the product. So being able to work with all of them wherever they were. And the beauty of coaching, again, is this idea of you pick somebody up right where they are and you deliver them as close to or at the destination that they desire to go to.
Yeah. So we have experience in Oracle. We've been able to create their pitch decks for them. So we're the ones that are taking all those technical words and making them visual and dropping all of the
Fantastic.
So we have been able to experience those pitch decks that we have to, sometimes we get to have, anyway. I understand. But that's great. And so, like you said, I mean, we worked with them in Boston and Chicago and, the Bay Area, London. I mean, I think at one time on one conversation we had 5 different time zones that we had to come to be able to do. But hopefully you were just able to coach one-on-one with them, or did you have them all together?
There were a couple of speaking duos that were in different geographic locations, but they're used to collaborating together, so being able to sync their times, and then I could just jump in on that.
So they were all on one Zoom call together, as if they were going to be at Oracle Open all together. That's cool.
Yeah,
very
it was
cool.
really fun.
Yeah, and then you said you had some other clients that you actually went and traveled, right? Didn't you? Or maybe it was just Zoom.
I don't usually get to see my clients deliver, with the exception of TedX Boise. I would love to have been able to do that at Oracle Open World when you know that you're going to see 8 different people that you've been involved in. That would have been fantastic. Just didn't work out.
Maybe they get the recording to you so you could see what you're
if
the
they're
fruit of
if
your
they
labor,
are
right?
recorded, that would be really fun. But it does feel like you helped shape something and watch somebody grow from point A to point B and helping them make those strides. It's so really gratifying when I can see them.
For sure. Well, same if we, have these owners pitch and then they get funded, that's always a good thing.
Yeah, that is a good thing.
They've actually literally bought into the idea, and I think that's great.
Exactly.
Well, the other thing that I wanted to talk to you about that you mentioned is kind of a hot topic these days is how do we communicate with executives?
Yeah. More and more companies are investing in their employees' ability to communicate up to those higher offices. And I think the truest breakdown in communicating to that level is a misunderstanding of what they care the most about and how expediently they need to be able to make that decision. So speaking to an executive and coaching someone to do that really involves distilling to the most basic but compelling piece. And
so they don't get intimidated, right? I mean, that's kind of the idea, is that sometimes employees won't talk to their executives because they feel intimidated.
Sure. Yeah. So then we're dealing with kind of that stage fright, performance anxiety piece of it, and we can do that. But I think it has to start fundamentally with what do they need to know? Because I'm such a believer in that you have to start with what does my audience need? And so no presentation will be effective if you don't understand that. But if you do, your odds of success just skyrocket. So then if you feel good about what you know you need to say, then being able to get to where you can articulate it very succinctly with just the right pieces of information. People often talk back to TEDx talks. You're allowed 18 minutes, but we really stress the point that you shouldn't take a minute or even a second longer than is necessary to communicate your idea. And I think that's true in every communication that we should do. So even if it's pitching to a prospective client or an investor, or it's communicating up to your C-suite, being able to really understand what needs to be said and not taking a second or a word longer than is necessary, because that time is precious.
And we've done those DISC assessments, dominant, influential, supportive, communicative, or, you know, there's Myers-Briggs, there's Strength Finders, all these ones. And part of the test is said how best to communicate with me, and then how best to communicate with each type of person that you have. And definitely one of them was don't waste my time.
Right. No matter what type you are, don't waste my time.
Don't waste my time. Just spit it out. Tell me what you need to, you know, get to the point. Be direct, right? And I love everything in writing, just all the different things that people do. But yeah. Anyway, so tell me, where can people find out more information about you and the web addresses that they can get to you? How do they find you?
Sure. KirstenHolmberg.com, which is KirstenHolmberg. There's so many different variations on that name that it's so hard to spell. So KirstenHolmberg.com. And then IdahoSpeakersBureau.org. Pretty easy to find. I know everybody can spell that without my coaching of them. So
right, yeah. Bureau. That might be a little now.
And that's where, again, I just want more people to know that that's a resource to find great speakers. And if you are a subject matter expert, those are the people I want to tap and offer up to the event planners in our area. So those are the places to find me.
Okay, one more question. If you engage with somebody to coach, how long does it usually take for the coaching sessions? Is it like a one and done, or is it ongoing? What do you normally do?
It depends on what they need, again, which I don't mean to be evasive in any way, shape, or form, but depending on what they come in looking for. Somebody who's dealing with some anxiety, that probably is going to take 3 sessions-ish, because we need to harness what they're already good at, identify those skills and talents, figure out how to leverage them for this, reframe their thinking around it, and that takes a little bit more time. My sessions are about an hour, but being able to accomplish something in about 3 hours, that's a pretty quick return. If somebody's coming in and they already have their idea, their talk written, they've already got their slide deck, and they really just want to work on, help me polish this, show me how to make sure I'm using my gestures and the space effectively, that might not take more than one. So it really varies according to the client's goals and where they're starting, but it doesn't have to be invasive. What's fun is when clients resurface because they've got another gig coming up and they just knew it was so helpful to have. As a coach, I kind of get to be that mirror. Hey, did you see that you were doing this? And showing that to them. And that's useful anytime you're having an engagement that you're preparing for.
Oh, good. I lied. One more question.
Go for it.
Okay. Why do you do what you do, and where do you see yourself in 5 years? That was 2 questions.
That was 2. I wasn't counting.
Why do you do what you do? Yeah, and where do you see yourself in 5 years?
I do what I do because most people want to be better at public speaking, so I see an opportunity to leverage my experience for their benefit. So being able to help people is really significant, and I do it as a speaking coach as opposed to ghostwriting and editing because I really enjoy the interaction a whole lot more. So that's truly enjoyable to me. I love the opportunity to make somebody else shine. That just tickles me. In the space of 5 years, my nest will be empty. And I don't know what that chapter will truly look like, but I see myself doing all the same types of things. I've been able to craft a life that I love. And I'm not anxious for any of it to change, to be honest. If I can just continue to work with fascinating speakers who have great ideas and they want to get better at that, I could do that till the cows came home.
Very good. Very good. Well, thank you for joining us on the Marketing Expedition webinar and podcast series.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And we'll have this out in our usual ways, but hopefully you can join us every second Thursday live on the Marketing Expedition webinars that we have, as well as go to iTunes and subscribe to the podcast. All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the Marketing Expedition podcast. Find more online at peppershock.com.